Jessica stood by the kitchen window, watching the leaves fall outside their quiet New Hampshire home. The trees had already turned gold and red, and the air smelled like firewood and cold wind. It should have felt peaceful, but something inside her felt heavy. The house was quiet, too quiet, like it had been for months. She glanced at the clock. Almost 7 p.m. mark, her husband was in the living room, half asleep on the recliner with a football game playing low on the TV. He'd barely said 10 words to her all day. That used to bother her, but now she was just used to it. 7 years of marriage had worn down the excitement, the laughs, the little things that once held them together. These days, it was just routines. Dinners, dishes, work, and sleep. Then her phone buzzed. Tyler. Hey, it's passing through town with Chris. Mind if we crash at your place tonight? Jessica stared at the message for a second. She hadn't seen Tyler or Chris, Mark's 2 college friends, in almost a year. They were fun, loud, and full of energy, the complete opposite of how her evenings had felt lately. She asked Mark if it was okay. He shrugged. Sure, tell them to bring beer. That was it. No excitement. No interest. Jessica sent a quick reply, tidied up the guest room, and lit a few candles. Not because she wanted to impress anyone. She just wanted the house to feel alive again, even if just for one night. When the doorbell rang an hour later, Tyler and Chris came in laughing, arms full of snacks and drinks. Tyler was tall and confident, always the talker. Chris was quieter, but had a warmth in his smile that put people at ease. They hugged her like they meant it. This place still smells like fresh-baked cookies, Tyler joked. I bought them from the store. Jessica smiled. But thanks for pretending. They settled in quickly, spreading out in the kitchen while Mark stayed in the living room. The 4 of them had dinner together, pizza and salad, and for the first time in a long time, Jessica felt like part of a group. Not just someone passing through the room. Mark stayed mostly quiet, focused on the game. Tyler told wild stories from their college years, making Chris laugh until he nearly spilled his drink. Jessica laughed too, really laughed, and it felt unfamiliar, like stretching a muscle she hadn't used in years. By 10 p.m., Mark stood up and yawned. Long day. I'm heading up. You guys make yourselves at home. Jessica looked up, surprised. She thought maybe he'd stay a little longer since it was rare to have company. But instead, he disappeared upstairs without saying goodnight to anyone, including her. The room felt different after that. Tyler leaned back on the couch, sipping his drink. Chris offered to help Jessica clean up. She waved him off. It's fine. Stay and relax. But he followed her anyway, carrying a stack of plates. In the kitchen, it was quieter. Jessica rinsed dishes while Chris leaned against the counter. You okay? He asked gently. She paused, then nodded. Yeah, just tired. But he didn't look convinced. You seem different than the last time we saw you. Jessica dried her hands and shrugged. Marriage changes things, I guess. Chris didn't push. He just nodded, respectful, but his eyes lingered like he wanted to understand. Back in the living room, Taylor was still wide awake. I was thinking, he said, we should stay up and catch up properly. No way we're falling asleep before midnight. Jessica smiled, then hesitated. Part of her knew this night was already different. Not in an obvious way, but something subtle. The way they looked at her, the way she felt seen. The way her husband had walked away without noticing anything. She sat down anyway. They talked for hours about music, places they'd traveled, people they used to be. Tyler made her laugh again. Chris chimed in with quiet, thoughtful comments. And Jessica found herself leaning into the moment, not as a wife. Not as someone keeping the house in order, but as herself, the woman she used to be. And the more the night went on, the more that version of her came alive. She wasn't flirting. Not exactly. But there was an energy between them, a closeness that didn't exist before. It was in the way Tyler asked her about her dreams. The way Chris noticed when she tucked her hair behind her ear. The way they listened. She couldn't remember the last time Mark asked her anything about her at one point. The room went quiet. The movie had ended. The fire was low. Jessica looked at the clock. 1:17 a.m. I should probably head up, she said quietly, not wanting to move. Tyler stood too. Yeah, us too. Thanks for letting us stay. Chris offered her a soft smile. Night, Jess. She stood there for a second, watching them climb the stairs to the guest rooms. Everything in her chest felt full and heavy at the same time. She turned off the lights and walked upstairs slowly. Mark was still snoring, completely unaware of the long night she'd just had. Not because anything happened, not physically, but something had shifted in her heart, and that scared her more than anything. Jessica woke up before the sun. She lay there in the stillness, staring at the ceiling, feeling the strange weight of the night before. Mark was still asleep beside her, breathing slow and steady, the same man she had built a life with. But lately, it didn't feel like they were living it together. She sat up quietly, careful not to wake him. Slipping into her robe, she padded downstairs to make coffee. The house was cold, but the kitchen felt warmer somehow, probably from all the quiet conversation, the soft laughter, and the strange sense of being seen again. She poured herself a cup and looked out the window at the gray October sky. Everything outside was calm, but inside her, something stirred. Tyler came down first. Hair messy hoodie pulled over his head. He grinned when he saw her. Morning, early bird. Jessica smiled back. Didn't sleep much. Same, he said, pouring his own coffee. Too many thoughts? They sat at the kitchen table, talking in low voices, trying not to wake the house. The mood wasn't flirty, just easy, like two people sharing a moment neither expected. Tyler asked about her work, her hobbies, things Mark hadn't asked in months. She told him how photography used to be her passion, how she hadn't picked up her camera in over a year. Why'd you stop? He asked. She hesitated. I guess. I just stopped feeling inspired. Life got too quiet. Chris joined them a little later, still sleepy but smiling. They made breakfast together, eggs, toast, coffee refills. Mark came down last, rubbing his eyes and barely saying good morning. He sat on the couch with his phone, scrolling while the others finished eating. Jessica noticed the difference more than ever. Tyler and Chris asked about her day. Mark didn't even ask what was for breakfast. After the guys left for a hike, Mark stayed home to nap. Jessica decided to go through old photo albums. She found one from the first year of their marriage. Vacations, smiles, silly photos, reminders of a time when they were full of life. She turned the pages slowly, wondering where that version of them had gone. Later that evening, Tyler and Chris returned, muddy boots and wind-blown hair. They dropped their backpacks at the door, laughing about getting lost on a trail. Jessica brought them towels and water. Tyler gave her a quiet thank you that lingered longer than it should have. It wasn't just polite. It felt like something more. Something careful. That night, they played a board game in the living room. Mark was distracted again, only half involved, checking sports scores on his phone. But Tyler and Chris stayed present, laughing, telling jokes, asking her opinion on things that didn't really matter. Yet somehow did. Jessica felt torn. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She hadn't crossed a line. But her heart was leaning somewhere it shouldn't. Not because she wanted to betray her husband, but because she was remembering what it felt like to be wanted. Valued seen. At one point, she stepped outside for air. The stars were bright. The sky was wide, and the chill helped clear her thoughts. A few minutes later, Chris joined her. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside her looking up. You okay? He asked. Jessica nodded. Just thinking. I get it, he said. Things feel different lately, huh? She glanced at him. You noticed? He nodded. It's not just you. Mark's been distant. Even back in college, he had his moods. But you seem more alone than I remember. Jessica's chest tightened. It was one thing to feel invisible. Another to have someone else see it. I didn't mean to say too much, Chris added quickly. It's not my place. No, she said softly. Thank you for saying it. They stood in silence for a moment. No touch, no tension. Just understanding. When they went back inside, Tyler looked at her with a quiet question in his eyes. She smiled slightly, reassuring him nothing was wrong. But everything was changing, slowly, quietly. That night, after everyone went to bed, Jessica lay next to Mark again. He rolled away from her in his sleep, mumbling something she couldn't understand. She looked at the ceiling, heart pounding. This wasn't about wanting someone else. It was about needing something more attention, more affection, more connection. Things that had slowly faded until she forgot how much they mattered. For the second night in a row, she didn't sleep. The next morning, Tyler and Chris packed their bags. They were heading west to visit another friend. Jessica made coffee and said goodbye at the door. "Thanks for everything," Tyler said, voice low. "Really?" Chris gave her a hug that lingered just a second too long. When the door closed behind them, Jessica stood there for a while, holding her cup. Heart full of questions. What was that feeling? It wasn't love. It wasn't desire. It was awareness. Awareness of how far she'd drifted from the life she once imagined. She went upstairs, saw Mark still asleep, and realized she wasn't angry at him. She was sad that something beautiful had been lost. Sad that it took two strangers to remind her of it. And more than anything, sad that she wasn't sure how to get it back. After Tyler and Chris left, Jessica felt a strange emptiness in the house. It was like a stillness that filled every room, but also a new tension she hadn't expected. Mark was back to his usual routine, going to work, coming home tired, and retreating into his own world. He didn't ask about the guys or notice anything different in her. She wondered if he even cared. Days passed, but Jessica kept replaying the weekend in her mind. The way Tyler and Chris looked at her. The easy laughter. The way she felt alive again. It wasn't about wanting them or anyone else, really. It was about the attention she had missed for so long. The way they listened made her feel like more than just a wife or a part of the furniture. One evening, Mark was working late, caught up in a project at the office. Jessica sat alone in the living room, the house dark except for the soft glow of the lamp. She felt restless, like something inside her was waking up, but she didn't know what to do with it. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tyler. Simple. "Hey, wanna grab coffee tomorrow? Just friends." Jessica stared at it. Friends? That word made her heart ache and also feel cautious. Could she meet him? Would it be harmless? Or was she already stepping into something she couldn't stop? She didn't reply immediately. The next morning she texted back. "Okay." At the cafe, Tyler was waiting with 2 coffees. His smile was warm, but there was something serious behind his eyes. They talked about everything and nothing. Life, dreams, regrets. Jessica found herself opening up more than she expected, telling him about her loneliness, how distant Mark had become, and how she sometimes felt invisible. Tyler didn't judge. He just listened. He shared his own struggles, how life after college had been harder than he thought. Their conversation felt like a balm, soothing and honest. As the weeks went by, these meetings became more frequent. They never talked about Mark. It was like a secret world where Jessica could be herself, laugh freely, and feel understood. Tyler's attention was gentle, never pushing. But it was enough to make her heart beat faster. One night, after a long conversation over dinner, Tyler walked her to the door. The street was quiet, the moon soft and low. He reached out, touching her hand lightly. Jessica froze. That small touch sent a shock through her. It wasn't just friendship anymore. She pulled back gently. "I can't," she whispered. Tyler nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know." That moment stayed with her. She wanted more, but she was afraid. Afraid of what it meant, afraid of what she was becoming. Back at home, Mark's snoring came from upstairs. He didn't know that downstairs, Jessica's world was shifting slowly, quietly, in ways she couldn't control. The nights grew harder. She lay awake, heart full of longing, mind full of questions. Was this just a temporary escape? Or was it something deeper? Was she falling for Tyler? Or falling out of love with Mark? One evening, Chris called. "Can we meet? Just talk." Jessica agreed, knowing that this was her life now, caught between the past and something uncertain. They met in a park, sitting on a bench under old oak trees. Chris was calm, patient. "You're hurting," he said simply. Jessica nodded, tears welling up. I don't want to hurt anyone. But you won't if you're honest with yourself, Chris said softly. You deserve to be happy. The words hit her hard. She realized she had been ignoring her own feelings for too long. The lonely wife who smiled but felt empty inside. That night she went upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked at Mark sleeping peacefully beside her. The man she had loved and built a life with. But the woman she had become was different now. Stronger, more aware, and confused. She knew she had to make choices. Choices that could change everything, and for the first time in years. She wasn't sure what the future held. Jessica woke up to the sound of rain tapping softly against the window. The morning light was gray and heavy. She lay still in bed beside Mark, listening to his steady breathing. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel numb. She felt a quiet tension. It's like the calm before a storm. She knew today would be different. The days and weeks that followed her time with Tyler and Chris had stirred up feelings she could no longer ignore. Her heart was pulled in directions she had never expected. And the life she had with Mark suddenly felt fragile. Like it might break if she looked too closely. She made breakfast quietly, trying to push away the knot of worry that had settled deep inside. Mark came downstairs, still sleepy, and smiled at her. For a moment, Jessica almost smiled back. Almost. But then the silence grew heavy again. The words she wanted to say got caught in her throat. That night, after dinner, she sat alone in the living room. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mark. Can we talk? Upstairs now? Her heart raced. Was he feeling it too? Was he ready to face the distance that had grown between them? She walked upstairs and found Mark sitting on the edge of the bed, hands clasped tightly. His eyes looked tired but honest. I've been thinking, he said, about us, about how things have changed. Jessica nodded slowly. Me too. Mark took a deep breath. I know I haven't been present. I've been wrapped up in work and stress. But I want to try. I don't want to lose you. Jessica felt tears prick at her eyes. I don't want to lose you either. But I've felt so alone. They talked for hours. Not about blame or anger, but about what they needed from each other, from themselves. Mark admitted he had been scared to face the problems. Jessica shared how she had found comfort in Tyler and Chris's kindness. It wasn't about them, she said softly. It was about feeling seen. Mark reached out, taking her hand gently. I want to see you again. Really see you? In that moment, the fragile walls between them started to come down. It wouldn't be easy. They both knew that. But it was the first step. The days that followed were not perfect. There were awkward silences, moments of doubt, and times when the past felt too close. But Jessica and Mark kept talking, kept trying. They started going for walks together, sharing meals without distractions, and slowly finding pieces of themselves they thought were lost. One afternoon, Jessica ran into Tyler unexpectedly at the grocery store. Their eyes met, and for a second, everything was still. But she smiled warmly and said, Good to see you. Tyler nodded, respectful. You too. Take care of yourself, Jessica. That night, she told Mark about the encounter. They talked openly, without jealousy or anger. It was clear that while Tyler and Chris had been part of her journey, her heart was now with Mark, the man who was willing to fight for them. Months passed, and the house began to feel like home again. Not because everything was perfect, but because Jessica and Mark were choosing each other. Day by day. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Jessica rested her head on Mark's shoulder and smiled. It feels like we're starting over, she whispered. Mark kissed her forehead. We are. But maybe that's the best kind of love. The one that's grown stronger through the storms. Jessica closed her eyes, feeling hope bloom inside her. The road ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time in a long time, she believed in the possibility of a new beginning together.